I just want to thank all of you guys who enjoyed my Waiting for Halo 4 documentary. In fact, actually, I've got a lot of positive comments about that documentary. In particular, one that said, you should do a Blu-ray release, you should do a DVD release for it. And I was flattered, I got to admit, by that comment because, well, I can't do a Blu-ray or a DVD release for that documentary because I used Halo footage and stuff like that in Halo music. However, I figured, you know, there were a lot of scenes that I ended up cutting out of that documentary. If I can't do a Blu-ray release, why can't I do like a special feature kind of thing for the people who really liked it? So I had some footage that I had cut. Most of this ended up either not getting filmed or on the cutting room floor, basically, for this documentary. The way I had originally designed Waiting for Halo 4 was to kind of tell two stories at the same time and overlap them. And I think I succeeded with this in the final cut of it, where I was telling the story of what it was like to wait between Halo 3 and Halo 4's release, but also to say what my history was with the Halo franchise and things like that. And I tried to intercut them together. As I was working on the footage that I had shot, I must have shot well over an hour's worth of footage and certainly planned out a lot more than what I ended up using. A lot of scenes didn't work with that coherent, or if I used them, it felt wrong. In the end, the final cut of it ended up just being a bit under 30 minutes, and I was pretty happy with the way it turned out, absolutely. But there were some scenes that I kind of, for another way or another, wish that I could have used, but I couldn't. It just either wouldn't have fit in the narrative, or would have made the narrative too long, it would have been a bit redundant. So I figured, why not do like a deleted scenes special feature, basically, to show you guys what some scenes were that would have ended up in the documentary had it been longer. I just want to say that I am going over some of these scenes so that basically there are two possibilities of this happening. These are being photo processed, meaning that I am going to be editing them so that they are in a finished state. However, to say that they could fit into the movie as they are in their finished state, I don't honestly think it would work that way. There's just really nowhere to put them, basically, so I can't really do like a director's cut or something like that. It just wouldn't feel right. But you're welcome to watch the scenes, these individual scenes on their own, and see what you think of them. And please post a comment about what you think. So what do you say we get started, shall we? And you can see what was cut from Waiting for Halo 4. Okay, the first thing that you're going to see is a little bit of an after side I did from the main narration that I used for the documentary. When you're watching the documentary, you'll notice that it's me mostly talking through it, kind of giving an elaborate narrative about what my wait has been, intercut with extra footage and things like that. That was what I always intended to do with it. As I shot the main narrative, after I finished with it, I decided, just in case, basically to do like a B-roll, basically. I didn't want to overlap anything that I had previously done with the speech about the wait, so I decided to do like a B-roll about why I thought the Halo franchise worked, why I thought that the main Halo story worked so well. And it ended up overlapping with a conversation that I had about the dynamic between Master Chief and Cortana. I ended up going about probably around 10 minutes of footage of just me talking about the Chief and Cortana, basically, and their relationship. With my intention was to either weave it into the story itself or include it as part of the documentary and intercut into it game footage and scenes from the cinematics that would have, you know, exclamated my points. The problem was that as I was cutting the final bit, I realized that this B-roll wasn't necessary. The documentary itself would have been far too long with it added, and it just didn't fit too well into the narrative structure. It was just best to go with the A-roll, stick with that, and then just, unfortunately, the B-roll had to go into the cutting room floor. I never edited it. It was almost brought in, but as I was editing it, I just dropped the sequence. So you guys are going to probably see for the first time what this B-roll footage was in its what would have been its final version all by itself. In fact, actually, this could probably be alone a GameAccess.net video. So watch it and enjoy. I think the reason why we like the Chief so much is because he has been the most badass of characters in history.
We're cutting it close.
Here we go.
Shut them down. We'll need them later. Fancy a look?
Did anyone else make it?
Scanning. Just dust and echoes. We're all that's left. We did what we had to do. For Earth. An entire Covenant armada obliterated, and the Flood. We had no choice. Halo. It's finished.
Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of great characters out there in video game history, especially over the last couple of years. There have been some great characters, but for the most part, either a lot of the great characters have already had their stories resolved, or at the very least have had, continual game releases. Very few games with great characters and great stories have actually either not been continued or have had their stories being left off as a cliffhanger. People, I'm sure on the PlayStation end will probably say, well, we really like Kratos and we really like Kratos' story. It's like, fine, yeah, great, that was concluded. And there were continuous God of War release games released. And in fact, there's one coming up next year. But there's also others. BioShock, for example, had a great main character. His story was concluded at the end of the game. At the end of the game, we had we had that character's conclusion. So there was really nothing to be waiting for. But the Master Chief was not concluded, nor was Cortana. And so and we've been waiting 5 years. But let me tell you why he's so great. He's so great because even though he is a faceless character, he does still have a personality, especially given the dichotomy that he has with Cortana. Their banter together has been phenomenal. When the Chief is unable to come up with a solution for himself, Cortana is able to provide the solution. When Cortana is has not been able to provide her own solution, the Chief is right there with the grenade.
He must be trying to take the core offline. Even if I could get the countdown restarted, I don't know what to do.
How much firepower would you need to crack one of the engine's shields?
Not much. A well-placed grenade, perhaps, but why?
Just tossing it around with his own solution, basically. Their dynamic worked fantastic. Their history, which has been explained to us in the previous books and in some of the animated features and things like that, is quite tragic in a lot of respects, but respectable.
They let me pick. Did I ever tell you that? Choose whichever Spartan I wanted. did my research, watched as you became the soldier we needed you to be. Like the others, you were strong and swift and brave. A natural leader. But you had something they didn't. Something no one saw but me. Can you guess? Luck. Was I wrong?
Here was a guy that was basically created as a child, adapted to become this heavy weapon of war in the face of insurrection, a civil war amongst humanity. And then we get a transmission, your destruction of is the will of the gods, and we are their instrument, and then all of humanity is in chaos. All of humanity is under attack, is at war. And the chief is able to fight, is solely able to beat back an invasion that is willing and capable of destroying us had we not had the chief. Other crewmates of his, other squad mates of his fell in battle. Other were, lost with all, or missing or killed in action, but not the chief and not Cortana, The chief basically took every single opportunity that they tried to, that his enemies used to try to kill him, and not only humiliated him, but delivered staggering defeats. Whether it be the destruction of the Halo rings, or whether it be the destruction of Covenant fleet, the death of the Flood. I mean, the chief has been there, has been able to do that, and I understand that he did it with help.
What we should do, Commander, is understand clearly that this is humanity's final stand. Here, at Earth. We risk everything. Every last man, woman, and child. If we stand our ground, we might just have a chance.
No. If your construct is wrong, then the Flood is already won.
I'll find Cortana's solution, and I'll bring it back. Earth is all we have left. You trust Cortana that much? Sir. Yes, sir. Well, this is either the best decision you've ever made or the worst. Hell of it is, Chief. I doubt I'll live long enough to find out which.
He had the Arbiter there with him, or he had the backing of the UNSC behind him, but it was the Chief's decision to do these things. If it was up to the UNSC, he would not have gone to the Ark, for example. I just want to know what happens. And on top of that, I want to know if Cortana's okay. I mean, she's a great character too. The thing about her is that, let's say first off, there's not a lot of girl characters in video games to begin with. And in most cases, a lot of major girl characters in most video games, especially since the early days, girl characters would be there for fan service. Cortana is probably one of the smartest characters in video games that I can think of. While she has been, and she's not even, and she is an artificial intelligence, but she's not simply just automated, an automaton or something like that.
You look nice.
Thank you.
She's got her own personality. She's a smart ass at times. She's great at doing what she does. But the cool thing is that they decided, that they chose to give her a personality. Not only will she fight back when threatened, she will You know, she'll do it with a smile. You know, she'll do it with an attack line. And she doesn't just need the chief to do this. I mean, a lot of people since probably around 2004 were theorizing that Cortana was going to die because there were when the graphic novels came out, but also a lot of people believe that Cortana was probably going to die, probably since around 2004. And in fact, I actually remember that there is a fan song somewhere, which is literally called The Death of Cortana. Somebody had wrote it. And I remember there was a documentary where somebody asked him, it was actually the girl who does the voice of Cortana, Jen Taylor, actually interviewed him, and she asked him, why would she die? And he says, well, she's just so full of memory. She's just so, you know, there's just so much data inside of her. Mostly from what we read about in the released novels, the companion novels like The Fall of Reach or particularly First Strike, where it was established that she was very full of data after the first Halo incident. She had taken a lot of data from the Covenant as well as from the Forerunners, and it was getting difficult for her to process with all of that data that was in there. It's kind of like a system that has capabilities of RAM, you know, it's like serious data compiling capabilities, but is slowed down when it's got more to process, basically. And that seemed to be what was happening with Cortana in those books. And then on top of that, you had her experience being, you know, held captive by the grave mind and stuff like that.
But so much of me is wrong. Out of place. You might be too late.
You know me. When I make a promise.
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
There was always the concern about something bad happening to her. And now we don't know what to think because who knows how long the Chief has been in stasis. Who knows what's going to happen when Halo 4 picks up. But based upon what we saw in the Halo novel, in the Halo Legends video, it doesn't look good for her. And if it doesn't look good for her, without that dichotomy, without Cortana's help, will the Chief be able to function without her? They were the perfect group. They were the perfect team. What's going to happen if we know that Halo 5 and Halo 6 are coming after Halo 4? They've already announced that. In fact, they announced Halo 5 and Halo 6 with Halo 4's announcement. What's going to happen if Master Chief has a Halo 5 without Cortana? Or will he be able to function without her? Even I understand that, you know, we didn't have her in Halo 3 for the most part, but at the very least she was transmitting. Halo 3 was about the search for Cortana, and with that search can come the savior of mankind, the saving of mankind. Will the Chief be able to function without her, even if he can't find her anymore? You know, if she's gone, what's going to happen then? Will the Chief be able to stand on his own? He'll have to stand on his own without her. Okay, this next bit you're going to see was cut for a bit of redundance. As you guys have seen, for those of you who may have seen the final version of it, you know that I did actually go through and show my video game collection itself of all the Halo games that I had accumulated. But what you didn't see was I actually intended to shoot 2 other sequences showing my collection. One of which I did end up shooting at the time of the footage. In fact, it was one of the first things that I actually ended up shooting, where I showed my Halo book collection. The reason why I had shooted this and intended to use it was because I thought that the Halo books were a major reason, or just the best way you could have seen exactly how expanded the Halo universe was. Because some of the first things that came out for the Halo Expanded Universe were the novels. And then there were more than just that later on. There was the graphic novels, there were the art books. I would probably argue that Halo has one of the largest expanded universes for a video game in novels, in books. in general. And I wanted to show the audience some of that. The reason why I cut it was because even though it was great for showing off a glimpse into the expanded universe of Halo, it didn't really mesh well with what I'd already shown from the video games. I figured if you're going to show one part of the collection, which is the video games, it would have just rambled on a bit more just to show the video game collection, then work in a book collection. So that's why I cut the scene. I think that Halo has also had a big expansion to expanding video game franchises past just the video games. I mean, as you can see here, I've also got a bunch of Halo books that I've had in my collection for quite a while. You can see right here I got the Halo Encyclopedia, which was a lot of fun to read. It's since been expanded. They've done a re-release of this one, but that's the original version. This one, I think, was probably the most recent, The Art of Building Worlds. And just look at the cover on this one. It's just just phenomenal. I think I got that last Christmas. Other books, of course, if you want to take, really take a look at them. I got down here, I got some of the graphic novels and stuff. Let's see what we got here. This is the original Halo graphic novel. It had 4 stories in it, all of them amazing. Really liked them, and I think that this is what really kicked off a lot of the Halo for comics, because right after that you had Bendis and Mayleaf, who I loved when they did their work on Daredevil series, when they did Halo Uprising, which was kind of like a story that was kind of told during, like, I guess Halo 2 or something. But I really liked this one a lot. I thought this was great. Helljumper. This was another great one that I liked a lot, about the ODSTs. And I think this was the last one I picked up. This was Halo Bloodline. Not much of a fan of this one. I didn't like it that much. Don't ask me why, but it kind of felt like, I don't know, it just kind of felt like a step backward for this one. I don't know if there's ever been any after that, but the artwork was really good. I got to give it that. The artwork was certainly really good. And since I'm showing all of those, I mean, it's beyond more than just that. I mean, take a look at these. These are just some of the Halo novels that I got. Obviously, most people are probably familiar with the first major 3. This was the prequel to the Halo story. It was a novel. This was the first time the story of Reach was actually told. This was almost 10 years before Halo Reach came out. The Flood, which was the retelling of the original Halo game. And of course, First Strike, which was a story between Halo 1 and Halo 2. It was released before Halo 2's release, and kind of was like a teaser for what Halo 2 was, when that was going to come out. Also, it came out, I mean, not only were just novels coming out, but also art books. I mean, some of the first art books that came out were all for Halo. And as you can see here, here's one where they were working on when they were doing development for Halo 2, which was, beautiful. I always liked this. And, I mean, since then, I mean, take a look at what we got here. I mean, just some of these books that I've got are basically art books for video games. But as you look at them really closely, they all came out either around the same time that Halo's art books came out, or after the time that Halo art book came out. And it's actually some phenomenal art books came out. I mean, I got Alan Wake's here. I've got Half-Life 2. This was the making of Half-Life 2 book. Mass Effect, of course. Down here, I've got Doom 3. Next to Fight Club. But, I mean, since then, I mean, it became an enormous franchise. You had the Halo Evolution story compilation, Contact Harvest. Joe Staten wrote the original, wrote the Halo games. He was the director of the Halo cinematics for the early Halo games. And here he is writing a bestseller, basically. Ghosts of Onyx, which I read. This was a book I read pretty much summer 2007, before Halo 3 came out. Had a lot of fun with that one. And the Cold Protocol right here was the last one I picked up. Since a lot of these books have been re-released, and there's the Forerunner trilogy, this is a big business. These games have been very, very, very popular. And because of that, anything that's been branded with it has been very, very heavily sought after. I mean, just take a look what I've got here. Other games tried replicating it. You got right here, this is the Gears of War graphic novel. This was after the fact. Other games have pretty much used this as like a stepping stone. This is Arkham City right here. Take a look at this one. this was based on the video game. This was not based upon the continuity of the comics. It was its own continuity. So I'm grateful to Halo for not just being great games, but for allowing people to realize, and for people in other mediums to realize, just how expanded just how far expanded video games could be, how they could branch out into other mediums and do quite well financially. The final thing that I cut, which actually was cut in the drawing room stages. I never shot it. In fact, I'm going to shoot it specifically for this documentary, or this little aside. I'm going to shoot the scene as I intended to do so. Was kind of an extension of that expanded universe. I was actually going to show off my collection of the Halo music soundtracks and stuff like that. Now, the reason why I wanted to put it in there was because of one particular bit. Particularly, I was inspired to do so by the Halo 4 soundtrack. The Halo 4 soundtrack release, when I picked it up, actually included some things that reminded me very much of when the music industry tried to do DVD music way back in the day. I wanted to kind of show that reference, and I think that actually, no, actually it wasn't included with the Halo 4 soundtrack, now that I remember it. It was actually included with the Halo Wars soundtrack. They included actually a separate disc with all the music on 5.1 audio, or at least some of the tracks in 5.1 audio. They also ended up doing something very similar to that in the on the original Halo Combat Evolved CD. There was a second DVD disc that included some 5.1 mixes of some of the soundtracks used in some of the trailers, which I thought was very cool, but also kind of like almost like a step backwards because DVD music failed. I understand that it was probably one of my inspirations for actually making the the Waiting for Halo documentary, but in the long run, certainly by the time I was doing all of my main shooting for it, again, it kind of felt like, okay, I've already shot the book sequence, and I'm probably going to cut that. I'm shooting the video games collection sequence, and that's definitely going in there. It's already too long as it is. I'm talking like probably around 45. I had about 45 minutes of footage already shot by that time, and I think I was probably going to be cutting it down to about 30 minutes. There was no way for me to shoot the soundtrack bit and work it into the final cut, so I decided actually to not even use it, or not even shoot it in the first place. So you guys are going to actually see what would have been that sequence. I'm actually going to shoot it special for this documentary, so enjoy, guys. Another thing that Halo has really been pushing is actually the video game soundtrack. Now, I know that up until this point, video game soundtracks are not something that has been recognized by organizations like the Grammys and things like that, but Halo's had one heck of an amazing theme and a great soundtrack to accompany their games. And fortunately, they've actually been releasing these in CD form for the past couple of years, and I've got a bunch of them right here, actually. Some of these are probably some of my favorite CDs of all time. So I just wanted to show some of these. This was the first one that I had picked up. I got this off of Bungie's website, and they had their store when they were selling Halo stuff. This is the original Halo soundtrack. It's a 2-disc set, and the cool thing about it was that this was released just before Halo 2 had come out, so they included like a second disc, which was basically a DVD. And it had on it, you know, the trailers and the documentaries that they had for Halo 2 at the time, and 5.1 remixes of those soundtracks and trailers, which was pretty cool because it was nice to see, or I should say, it was nice to hear these songs in a 5.1 remix. So that had some value to it. Another one, and I'm sure everybody knows this album. In fact, I think it hit a few of the charts actually. The Halo 2 Original Soundtrack Volume 1. If I may say, I think that a lot of people probably picked this up because of some of the licensed tracks they included on here, like Hoopastank or Breaking Benjamin songs. For me, I'll be perfectly honest, it's got some of some of the best Halo music was actually on this disc, including the Mjolnir mix for Halo 2, and one of my favorite tracks that they used, the one that was used in the Halo 2 announcement trailer, The Last Spartan. That was on this album. Now, I know it says on here Volume 1. This was at release, they called it Volume 1, so a lot of people thought, well, is there a Volume 2? Is there going to be a Volume 2? There was actually a Volume 2. It was released much later. And what this Volume 2 actually did was, this was basically like, almost like how a movie would have, in that it would be the music through the entire scene by scene by scene, and that's what they were going for. These weren't the licensed tracks. This was basically trying to make it feel like the whole musical accompanied from beginning to end of an entire playthrough of the game. And I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of a cool choice for them to go for. So that's what they went for. It started with the original Bungie riff and it ended with the epilogue. So this was a different kind of soundtrack, but still cool to be a part of the collection. The next one I picked up much later probably has some of the most distinctive Halo music. Doesn't have the classic chants and stuff like that, but I liked it a lot. This is the 2-disc set for the Halo 3 ODST soundtrack. The saxophone on this. I can't tell you, some of my favorite parts of Halo 3 ODST, the game, was in release, you know, when they play the scenes and you're late at night, you're going through New Mombasa after it's been torn apart, and that saxophone, the sound of that saxophone as the level kind of fades in. I had to pick up this soundtrack just to recapture some of those great tunes. Marty O'Donnell really went with something else, something new, and something entirely new, something that hadn't been done in a Halo game before. And I think he really did succeed in that. And because of that, the music in Halo 3 ODST is awesome. And this soundtrack was a must-buy for me. Next one, we're going to step out of Bungie, and we're going to show something a little bit more modern. This is the soundtrack for Halo Wars. This is another 2-disc set, actually. The music here was done by Stephen Rippey, because the game wasn't done by Bungie. This game was done by Ensemble Studios. But they did something kind of cool with this, and I thought it was very interesting. Remember how I said on the Halo 1 disc they included a separate DVD along with the CD release to and included some 5.1 exclusive tracks from the trailers? This took it a step forward. Took it a step further than that. A couple of years ago, I don't know if a lot of people remember these, but a couple of years ago, people were talking about doing an entirely new medium for music. No, I'm not talking about digital downloads. I'm talking about DVD audio. Now, I know what you're thinking, but we can get concert DVDs and Blu-rays right now. No. I'm talking about just DVD audio, just audio put on a DVD. In fact, I've actually got one right here. This right here is a DVD with 5.1 remixes of some of the REM songs and stuff like that. Yeah, the cool thing about this was that this took a lot of classic songs, remixed them in 5.1, and compressed them in like DTS and Dolby Digital and stuff like that. There was video to accompany this, but it wasn't like a soundtrack album or something like that, and like you'd see a concert playing. This was just the music. So you could play the songs and stuff like that. This was actually intended to be... People thought this was going to be the next big thing. People thought that people were going to be buying these over CDs because of the remixes and stuff like this. They thought that they'd go buy this format. And the music industry was all for this because these were pressed to DVDs. What happened is that this never really took off. I don't know why. Maybe it was the strength of CDs, or maybe it was because of... people really liked, people prefer digital downloads and stuff like that, but, and not too many people had home theater systems and stuff like that, because you really need a home theater system in order to get the, in order to get the full experience that they were offering here. But, that having been said, it never took off, but they included a DVD disc of 5.1 remixed tracks from the main album here with the disc. With, in the jewel case. So, my guess is like, they're done with this, but you know what? Maybe they thought, we'll make them anyway and we'll include them with the CD. Which is what they should have done in the first place. Let's be honest, the music industry should have done that in the first place. I don't mind them doing this. In fact, that's pretty cool. I wish they do that more with more CDs and stuff like that. As it stands nowadays, if they include anything with a CD now, it's maybe just a couple of concert clips and stuff like that. It'd be nice to include with the CD a DVD with some concert performances. Nowadays, if I want that, if it even exists for a band I like, I'll usually just have to buy a separate DVD or Blu-ray. So now we're going to come to the last of this thing, of course, the Halo 4 soundtrack, which was released before the game came out. So there's that. It included actually 15 tracks, but a CD download, but a download for like 5 or 6 more actually that you could get off of their website. So that was pretty cool. I guess they kind of figured that some people would be downloading their stuff as well as, or maybe they just couldn't fit those extra 5 or 6 tracks on this disc, so they decided to make them as a downloadable content. That's pretty cool.